Well, hello, everyone, and welcome to Free Yourself from the Economy. So I'm very happy that you came today. Just one thing before we get started about how this is going to go. If you have any questions or comments that you would like to make during the presentation, please put those in the chat. I'm going to, in the interest of time and just flow, I'm going to try to keep going through. I might pause in the middle for some questions, but otherwise, I'm going to take all questions at the end, including those in the chat. So feel free to do that. And then I'll just launch right into it. So, what exactly do I mean by free yourself from the economy? Well, this is really just an opportunity for us, all of us, to just think outside the box for a little bit about the economy, whatever that means to you, capitalism, work, money, and how all these things tie into each other. So it's a chance to zoom out because, when we're in our day-to-day, we're just so, hustling and grinding, and we don't always have the chance to zoom out. So this is a chance to zoom out and start looking at things from different angles. Now, I'm not an economist, but when I started looking at, I guess I would call it the plight of workers in the United States, it occurred to me that workers are not working in a vacuum. They exist, they're working in this system, this economic system called capitalism, and which is, and the economy is tied up in that. And so there are all these drivers within that inform how people are working and actually the beliefs that they have about work and about oftentimes themselves and about money and livelihood and all those things. So within capitalism, the system, there are all these embedded beliefs that kind of keep us operating the way we operate. And it occurred to me that it's good to kind of take a look at that because sometimes we're operating unconsciously driven by some of these things, and sometimes they're not really great for us. I mean, there are great things about capitalism. It allows for a lot of creativity and innovation and invention. And then there are some downsides to it. So that's kind of what we're going to look at, is maybe some of the things that might be affecting you in ways that you're not aware of. So I'm going to take a little peek at some of those things. And the reason I wanted to do this particular webinar is because, a lot of people, a lot of my clients, but also, people at large have been just expressing some anxiety about, the coming potential of recession and words like inflation and the reality of inflation and, higher prices at the gas tank or at the grocery store. And so in order to just kind of maybe help people have a different way of looking at all these things and experiencing these things, that's why I kind of thought this would be a good topic for this particular time. So the first thing I want to talk about is, the first thing to think about is locus of control. What is locus of control? So locus of control is what we actually have control over right now. And that's where really our power is. We a lot of times spend a lot of energy and time thinking about and putting energy into things that we don't have control over. And I would say that we don't have control over the economy, right? So that's one thing that we really don't have control over. But what we might, ways that we might try to be controlling the economy is, let's say looking at the financial news on a regular basis, or just the news in general. If I can just stay on top of it, then I'll be ready if something happens. And another way that we do that is by over planning and trying to over prepare in our heads. Well, maybe I need to put my money here. Maybe I need to put my money here. Maybe I need to, put some money under a mattress, whatever it is. And some of that is fine, right? Making sure your assets in the right place. But when it becomes this kind of constant worry, that's churning, this rumination, that's when it becomes a problem. And again, what's within your control are the actions you can take right now. What's not within your control is what the economy is actually going to do. Now, I'm also going to say that the thing that people I think miss a lot too is that what's within the locus of your control, when you actually put all your energy, or let's say 90% of your energy, into what is within your control, you are extremely powerful, more powerful than you think. Or more in charge of things than you think. We often think about things like the economy. And I use the word economy, by the way, which kind of refers to anything it means to you. Whatever economy means to you, that's what it means. It's like, however that affects you. But so, the economy is, again, it's going to have a life of its own. But what we're going to be talking about is what's within the locus of your control and how you actually have more power within that realm than you might realize, especially if you stop putting a lot of energy, mental energy or otherwise, into trying to control things that you can't control, right? There are a lot of people out there who are trying to control the economy, right? The Federal Reserve, shareholders, stakeholders, CEOs. And I would say they're not actually controlling the economy. They may be poking a bear, but they're really just reacting because the economy is doing what the economy is doing. So some of the things we do have control over, and these are things I'm going to, talk more about one by one, but I'm just going to kind of introduce them now. One is, as I was mentioning earlier, our understanding of how certain beliefs might be embedded in this capitalistic paradigm that we're all a part of. Certain beliefs that might be affecting us that we're not aware of. So if we make what's invisible visible, so these embedded beliefs are kind of just, they're sort of embedded in our brains and we don't even know they're there, right? Because they're messages we've picked up from parents, from family, from society. So if we become aware of them, if we make the invisible visible, then they don't have a hold over us anymore. We can be free from them. The second point of, second part of locus of control is being able to tap into your internal world of resilience and, your inner resources. And this has to do with the fact that, no one out there, whether it's politicians or activists or no one out there is going to save you from the economy or from anything else, right? We have to save ourselves. And, most people are aware to some degree of their own resilience because you've made it this far in life, right? But there may be more there that you're not even fully aware of. So we want to talk more about that too. What else is in the locus of your control? The present moment. And the present moment, again, when we're not focusing on what might happen in the future, we have so much more clarity and better decision-making abilities in the present moment. So when we're worrying about what might happen, when we're trying to plan for and prepare for what might happen, we're actually missing the opportunity of being grounded in the present moment. And in the present moment is when we get insights. It's when we get amazing insights and creativity. So if you're not future focused, you might get an amazing insight about, oh, this is what I need to do with my assets, for example. That's what I need to do. But it happens not when you're grinding on the thinking, but when you're in the present moment, living your life. That's when we get our best information most of the time. Another thing is just when we start thinking differently about things, anything but stepping back from what we understand in the day-to-day to be reality, whether it's the economy or capitalism or whatever you want to call it, when we're able to start sort of loosening up around the meanings we have about all these things, that is hugely powerful because, again, then there's room for more information, for creative insights to come up about how we can live our lives better and more easily, more joyfully. And then the final part of that is that when we're more free, then we are a more positive influence on others. And in terms of, you can talk to a lot of people who have a lot of problems with the current state of capitalism and the economy and all that. But the thing is that there's an emerging society that is happening. And, when you start to become more aware of the emerging society, which I'll talk about too, and more aware of your own freedom within the economy, then you become a part of the emerging society, the new version, I would say, the new version of capitalism. So these are just things to think about that are within your control, so that you don't have to be worrying all the time about whether the economy is going to crash or not, or whatever your worry happens to be. Because it could be that you're worried about being laid off, or it could be you're worried about not getting another job, or it could be that you're worried about bankruptcy. I don't know, could be anything. So, but anyway, those are future things, so we don't want to worry about those right now. So I will next talk a little bit just about kind of the narratives that, like, the belief systems that are underlying capitalism that sometimes have a negative effect on people. I would say the caveat is that, any concept or term is potentially negative, or not negative, but neutral, or has multiple meanings to it, right? So the term I'm going to talk about first is scarcity. And a lot of people have a lot of different thoughts, feelings. It's a term that's come up a lot recently, scarcity and abundance. It's in the lexicon these days. But there's some ways I'd like to talk about it that I think is just kind of important to look at. One of the fundamental bases of capitalistic theory, right, is that, or I guess you would even say Western economic theory, is that scarcity is kind of at the heart of it. There are finite resources on the planet, and everybody is competing for them, and then, of course, wants to hoard them. So now, I would not argue with that per se, meaning, yeah, the earth, there are finite material resources on the earth. But scarcity is also a feeling, it's a way of experiencing things as well. And I'd say one of the things about the scarcity narrative that runs through the heart of capitalism is that it has led to the belief itself has led to many results that are not great, including, I'd say a hoarding of resources at the top 5% of the US, and income in the middle class, and especially working classes, has stagnated, and in some areas has even declined. So this idea of scarcity has actually created scarcity for a number of people. It's created, excess for a certain number of people, and it's created scarcity for others. But, research has shown, or the data shows, that if you actually spread out all the wealth, let's just say in America alone, that is concentrated at the top, everybody would have plenty. Everybody would have plenty, and the people at the top would still have plenty and still have more than the rest of us. But it's just this idea that I need to hoard, that creates this inequality. So scarcity itself creates results. There are consequences to the belief. But the other thing about scarcity in terms of natural resources is that it also becomes more true if the relationship that you have with the earth is one of just taking and extraction and not replenishing. This scarcity idea, it ignores the fact that the earth is a living thing. It's very regenerative. It has regenerative powers. I heard recently that if suddenly people disappeared from Manhattan, like suddenly people disappear from Manhattan, it would be overgrown in a matter of like a month. Like it would be the nature would just come in and take it over, right? So nature is hugely regenerative when allowed to be. When we have a healthy reciprocal relationship with nature, it's very regenerative, it's creative. You could say it's brilliant. But again, with the sort of post-industrial approach to nature, the earth is just kind of this utilitarian thing, and we just extract and don't replenish. that also leads to scarcity. So we're going to run out of resources, right? So it's a lot of what's baked into the philosophy is it perpetuates the problem. There's a woman I love her. She's a poet and an activist, and her name is Adrienne Marie Brown. She wrote a book called Pleasure Activism. And I recommend the book. It's really good. But one of the things she talks about, one of the quotes that she says is, part of the reason that so few of us have a healthy relationship with pleasure is because a small minority of our species hoards the excess of resources, creating a false scarcity, and then tries to sell us joy, tries to sell joy back to ourselves. Because scarcity it's not just about the actual supply of material resources. It's about whether we feel we have enough, and whether we're living with a sense of deprivation. I can experience abundance or scarcity around the same situation. Like some days I wake up and I feel so completely grateful and blessed. And I'm so thankful for all the gifts and blessings I have in my life and I'm taken care of. And I don't want for anything. Other days I wake up and I'm panicked. Oh my God, I don't have enough money in the bank. I don't have enough money for the future. We can all have different experiences of the same situation. But, I've learned enough not to pay attention to the panicked voices because honestly, it's not true. It's just an illusion of fear I have about the future. And the truth is that I have plenty. I have more than enough. So scarcity and abundance or plenty or enough are really ways we experience things. They're feelings or senses of things. I mean, if you think about it, right, even the people in the United States who are quote unquote struggling have way more in the way of material comforts than most of the people in the world. And yet there's this feeling of not enough or never enough that often runs through our culture. It's always keeping up, or it's never enough, or I don't have enough. So we've been sort of conditioned into this scarcity mindset, and people are becoming more aware of that for sure. But many of the leading thinkers nowadays are really talking about this idea of enough. And like, what is that? First of all, it's a reacquaintance with this idea of enough. Now, what Brown talks about, the woman who wrote Pleasure Activism, she wants to make this distinction that having enough doesn't mean suppressing desires. It doesn't mean you shouldn't want, that you shouldn't have ambition, that you shouldn't, have a dream and follow it. That's not what it means at all. It just means that if you're starting from a place of deprivation, if you're never feeling content or fulfilled, that's just going to be how you're operating. You're going to be chasing your dreams from a place of deprivation. It's never going to be enough. You're always going to be in this place of lack, of scarcity. However, if you have this relationship with enough, with appreciation or gratitude for what you have now already, and that doesn't just include material resources, it includes, again, the ability to enjoy pleasure, really deeply enjoy pleasure, or, relationship, deep, close connections. Those are or a connection to nature even, those are the things that create this sense of fulfillment and contentment that many people do not feel these days. So, there's the trance of capitalism that really kind of underlies a lot of the way people operate is not enough. It's not enough. It's never enough. I don't have enough. I'm not doing enough. I am not enough. So I hear this all the time working with clients. It's like the broken record. Am I doing enough? Should I be doing more? Like, I don't feel like I have enough. I need to have more stocked away. I need to have more this, more that. It's a little bit of a, it's obsession is not the right word, but it's just, that's how a lot of people are operating. And then you add an element of economic uncertainty, like recession, inflation, and it really gets people's stress hormones going. So, when the economy shifts, we start to fear we're going to lose something, right? We fear we're going to lose our livelihood or a level of ease and comfort, or so that's, or even lose everything. People have that afraid. I'm going to lose everything. It's unnerving. It's unnerving. But my next point is that, and this is similar to scarcity versus enough, but it's fear versus trust. So for many of us living in a post-industrial society, we have lost our ability to trust. And excuse me, that I mean that on a couple of different levels. We have become very disconnected from nature, so we don't really trust its processes so much. We tend to, we actually sometimes fear nature. It's gonna kill us, it's gonna harm us. So we've kind of lost this trust in the natural process of things. And we also, because of the way post-industrial society is developed, a lot of us have lost our communities. People have been spread far and wide, our families, our communities. So there's more isolation, which also leads to a lack of trust in our neighbors. And you see that reflected on social media with a lot of, hating and trolling. And it's like, well, a lot of that comes out of just this feeling of isolation and distrust. And many of us, of course, have distrust in our leaders too, which, because they seem to have agendas that maybe aren't serving us, so. But the trust I'm really talking about, and those are all versions of trust, but the trust I'm really talking about is like a deep trust in life, a trust in life. There's a book called Restoring the Kinship Worldview. I'm going to butcher this author's name here, but it's Wingpate Top and Darcia Narvaez. Those are the two authors. They discuss the way the dominant narrative, which is the post-industrial patriarchal narrative, has really perpetuated these fear-based mindsets. It's led us to, we tend to live in our heads more than our hearts. We're very kind of intellectualized. We're very data-driven. We're very materialistic. And because of this, things have gotten out of balance, and we've kind of, it's almost like maybe lost the plot a little bit, because at the end of the day, what are we really here for? Or what is really meaningful? And I'd say for most people, it's deep connections with each other, right? A sense of love, being cared for, belonging, things like that. And also a connection to nature and it's the creatures of the world and the planet and the wonders of existence. When we're in our grind every day, it's like, what do you mean wonders of existence? If you're familiar with Fred Rogers, Mr. Rogers, he was a very popular and beloved childhood. He had a children's story hour, children's television show for many years. And he said, I'm very concerned that our society is much more interested in information than wonder. More interested in information than wonder. And the book points to the way that the book, The Kinship, Restoring the Kinship Worldview, it returns to the way that the dominant worldview really does prize intellect over intuition. It prizes information over wonder, and it prizes the head over the heart. Now, it's not about either or, because we need both, right? But we might have lost a lot in this bargain. And we might have lost a lot in the form of a more caring society, and one that cares for the earth and each other more. And so, restoring the kinship worldview is about bringing this balance back, because there really is a lack of balance. And we often end up preoccupied with things like data and quarterly profits, even the rising cost of milk. I'm not happy about it, but we become preoccupied with these things. And we might be missing a lot of other wondrous things because we're so kind of focused in this sort of lack and kind of money focused mindset. There's the reality of what happens in the real world when prices go up, for example. I mean, there's the reality of that. And then there's this other piece of it, which, because we're missing it, I think we're missing how it actually serves us, even in a real world situation of the economy, not doing great, or things like healthcare being very expensive. I'm not happy about that either, right? But there's the real world effects of that, and then there's also ways that we might be missing our resilience too in terms of these areas. So I guess what I'm saying is, I'm asking you to consider that when we stop focusing on the finite material for a minute, what we realize is that we are okay. We're okay no matter what the economy is doing. We're perfectly okay. I mean, think about the last time you had a good laugh, and you were completely taken out of any kind of worries that you had. In that moment, there were no worries. You were just laughing and enjoying yourself. Or the last time you enjoyed a delicious meal, or, or hung out with your beloved pet or a good friend. Those are the priceless things. And even if you had to spend money, let's say, to do those things, spend money to take care of your cat, or, to go to dinner with a friend, the money is really irrelevant in that moment. It's about the connection. It's about the experience. So there's another quote from an author named Matthew Fox, and he said, "Awe gives birth to reverence, but consumerism and capitalism can abort awe." And that's kind of what I'm talking about. When we live more in a place of reverence, awe, wonder, and abundance, we're feeling better most of the time, because that's where we're focusing. When we're focusing on, whatever it is, the price of milk, or we kind of lose what's maybe our essence, this connection to wonder and to the trust in life itself. So the other piece I just want to touch on here is just, one of the distinctions I'm trying to make is that there is the economy, which is kind of this neutral thing. It's it's what's happening in the world. It's the markets, it's the state, it's the workers, and, labor and wages and all that. That's the economy. And then there's everything we think and feel about the economy, and all the meaning we make about the economy. So the economy I'm talking about is really the economy that lives in our heads. That's the economy that we have the ability to shift. Everything in the world is really neutral until we project something onto it. And that's true of the economy too. So when we hear trigger words like inflation or recession, our mind again goes off to the races, and we start going into future fear scenarios. But what happens there is that, sensations in our body get triggered, right? Like, that's what happens when we have an anxious thought. The whole system kicks in. And, really our mind-body organism is this amazing special effects system. It's like kind of watching the 3D surround sound movie all the time, because there's the reality, there's what's happening objectively, and then there's everything that's happening in our bodies and minds about that thing. And that's the part that we tend to want to avoid. We want to avoid the negative feelings and experiences that we will have as a result of what's happening with the economy. But what I want to say about that is that if you understand this, how the special effects system works, and you can understand, well, this is just my movie about the economy. I'm just watching this really dramatic 3D surround sound movie about the economy, and then it ceases to be so true or so real. You can understand that there's something objective happening over there, and that maybe if you understand this is not real, you might have a different experience of it. You can have a different experience of it. And if you think about it, when recessions happen or when inflation happens, I mean, it might be uncomfortable at first, but not that much changes in your life, really, because we're very adaptable. So, you look around your life, you're still taking out the garbage, you're still getting the kids to school, you're still, making dinner, you're still doing the same things. It's just that in your head, a lot of stuff is happening, a lot of anxiety, a lot of fear. Life itself is just kind of happening the way it usually happens. And it doesn't mean, again, that you don't have to make some sacrifices, maybe, or adjustments, but those things you tend to be uncomfortable at first. And then it just becomes the way it is, and we're fine. So the more the way we fear things is actually tends to be worse than the actual thing when it happens. Because when it happens, we are actually fine. And that brings me back to this kind of idea of our innate resilience that I was talking about, and our resourcefulness. And, some of us take that for granted. Like, well, I've gotten this far in life. Of course, I'll make it the next stretch. But I think what we miss is just the immense nature of our resilience. Meaning, when we're not worrying, when we're not over planning or overthinking, or trying to fend off some future scenario, we are so creative, and we are so adaptable, and we are so brilliant, really, when it comes to whatever we have to handle in the moment. So if that's for you, if that's bankruptcy, or if that's the failure of a business, or if that's a layoff, we might feel a certain way in the beginning, and then we manage it, we handle it. We have this amazing resilience and resourcefulness and creativity within us. And if we can trust that, then we don't have to fear anything, including the economy completely collapsing. You can go into all sorts of, worst case scenarios about what that looks like, the next Great Depression or whatever. But ultimately, people survived the Great Depression. People survived the financial crisis of 2008. People rose to the occasion. So whatever comes along, you're going to have more than enough tools to handle it. So, it's that trusting in yourself, trusting in your own creativity, your own abilities is a big part of it. So as we are at about 35 minutes in, I just want to because I don't want to take up too much time here, but I just want to kind of wrap it up a little bit with, I had sort of talked about this emerging economy, emerging society idea, which there are a lot of people right now talking about how things need to change, how, capitalism, we don't need to throw the baby out with the bathwater, but things need to change. It's not working for a lot of people. It's just not. And so there are a lot of thinkers who are kind of moving into this, I'd say, new era, new direction. And one book I would recommend is called Donut Economics by Kate Raworth. And she creates this whole new vision for the new economy, the economy that we need to put things back in balance for the people, for the planet. And so that's like one example of what the emerging economy looks like. And when you start, kind of starting to look for the new forms of this, like what does the emerging economy look like? A lot of it has to do with sustainability. A lot of it has to do with community efforts, like local small businesses that have, social responsibility in mind. these kinds of things. And they're really popping up all over the place. And I've seen them locally, I've seen them on the internet, and I hear people talking about them and the circular economy and how we're going to move into this new economy. And I think it's very hopeful. And the thing about it is it also has the compassion piece built back into it, which has been missing. The compassion and the collective piece has been missing from the free market capitalism for a long time. And so that part is being built in. It's like, no, we have to consider everyone, whatever that means. We can't just leave people behind. So I think that's very hopeful too. And I think if you start to get eyes for the emerging economy, and that's another thing about the power, that what's in our locus of control. I mean, consumers have power. Where we put our money and energy matters, and if we start putting our money and energy into what are these new versions of business and economy, then there's going to be a powerful shift. And the more people that become aware of it and become conscious of it and on board, the better that is for everyone. So this is pretty much in a nutshell, freeing yourself from the economy. And it's in a nutshell. And before I shut my mouth for a minute, I just want to say just a few words about the Work-Life Playbook, which is my course that just opened up on Monday, this past Monday. These are some of the themes that we explore in the course because, it's how capitalism and how we think about money, work, how that affects us in our daily lives, and how we can actually find ways to show up in ways that are healthier for us, that in which we have more enjoyment and vitality at work, so that it's less of a grind, and in ways, and burning out less, less of the hustle culture, finding ways to work smarter, not harder, and also as a result, sort of becoming a part of this emerging economy and what that means. So Work-Life Playbook is open now. And if you want, have any more information about it, you can go to my website, which I'm going to put in the box below if you're watching the recording. And if you're not watching the recording, I'm going to put it in the chat in a moment. All right. Well, I really, really appreciate you taking the time to be here because it means a lot to me. So thank you guys for coming.